Hey, it is Cody from the Keepers of Nerdom. How are you all doing today? I wanted to actually review another Gen 2 deck. I believe this deck is rated at 30% or so. It is known as Zumiox, the Spirit Caller Cat Burglar. And it was actually a deck I bought off my brother because it is my one and only Timetraveller deck. It was rated, like I said, like at the 30%. It's like 30, 31%. And needless to say, not a great deck, but I wanted a Timetraveller deck just to have fun with. And here's the set list. We'll go through it. By the way, these little boxes, if you have a specific deck that you really just enjoy, and, first off, do actual special sleeves and stuff if you want to. But in this case, all I did was, this was actually given to me by a friend, that they had a lot of Keyforge stuff and they needed more space, so they just couldn't use this anymore. So I kept Zumiox, the Spirit Caller Cat Burglar, in here because it's just a fun little deck. So the rest of my decks that are really special, they have special sleeves on them, and they sit in my box with my higher rated stuff, where I kept this one just because of the specialness of what it is. So let's go through, but I highly recommend these little deck boxes, and there's some bigger types of those as well. But I love that you can keep it in the deck box and still have the name and the factions and stuff. It's just fantastic. So let's do a review of this and how it functions together. Actually, it's got some great mechanics that I'll show you. Just interesting. So Timetraveller is actually a Gen 1 card that they brought into Gen 2 as well. So just keep that in mind. We'll go through Brobnar first, then Sanctum, then the Logos. So, this deck is actually a lot of speed, but unfortunately it doesn't do everything very well. But if you're playing against like-minded decks, it is actually fantastic. Like, it is bonkers good. So Gengar Chieftain, ready in fight with a neighboring creature. Just always good to get some fight going, to move some things. Calfine, before fight, deal 2 damage to each neighbor of the creature Calfine fights. It's pretty good if you can get it to go off. Like, extra damage is always good. First Blood. You have to play this first thing, and it deals 2 damage for each friendly Brobnar creature. You may divide this creature among any number of creatures. That doesn't have to be ready, so if somehow they got exhausted by your opponent, they're still okay. But it's just interesting because it's dependent on what you have out. So, not my favorite card. Another Gengar Chieftain. Bram-O, when you play him, deal 2 damage to each enemy flank creature. Great card just to get some immediate damage. Kolf the Quiet. This is a weird card because it's elusive, which is very strange in Brobnar, and it's a 6-power minion, so it's just a neat mechanic. Nothing great. Another First Blood. Blood Money. Great cards. Place 2 amber from the common supply on an enemy creature. So you can control where the amber goes, and it's a way to get 2 amber for free as long as you're smart about it. So Little Rapskull is elusive, and creatures when used must fight, if able. They have to fight. Very interesting card. I believe that is a Gen 2 card and was not from Gen 1. Okay, so into the fray. We're going to come back to this card because this card is insane in the right circumstances. For the remainder of the turn, a friendly Brobnar creature gains fight, ready this creature. So it continues to ready itself up to the maximum of 6 uses of a fight, because that's what they have in the rules. So we're going to set this card aside and talk about it once we get to Sanctum here in a moment, because this deck has enough interesting things. Groke, when you fight, your opponent loses 1 amber. This is great-ish, because it only works so many times because you have to survive the fight in order for the fight ability to go off. Before fight goes off before the fight, so you can just use it. The Flex. Choose a friendly ready Brobnar creature, exhaust it, and gain amber equal to half of its power, rounding down the gains. So if you can use this on Kolf the Quiet, you've got something amazing, because then you've got 3 amber for essentially just not using a creature rather than 1 at most, or maybe if they fought and got that common supply thing, the putting it onto them for 2. Just it's a cool card. So we're going to come back to into the fray here in a second. So let's talk about the Sanctum. Now, Maruk the Marked, after he prevents armor damage with his armor, capture 1 amber for each damage just prevented. If you can increase his armor, he captures more. So if he has 2 armor, he will capture 2. This is a neat card because it gives you an interesting way to capture, and potentially a way to capture more than 1 at a time. Very fun. Vemos Lightbringer. Again, this is a Gen 2 deck, and for some reason that just happens to be what I've pulled out lately. Destroy each elusive creature. You do have to keep in mind Kolf the Quiet is in here, so he will accidentally target him. But this is really good against Shadows decks, where you just pop him on the field and just nuke Shadows. So Chow, the Safeguard. Deploy and taunt. Okay, so you get to deploy him wherever you want. Sorry for the lighting right here. But when he taunts, that's where things get interesting. Because then you can deploy him wherever you want and protect something. Very, very handy. Abon the Armorsmith. I love this card always. Other friendly creatures gets +1 armor. So for the remainder of the turn, you can use it for an action. Other friendly creatures get +1 armor. Now, this is interesting because they have the ability to gain armor. And the one thing you have to keep in mind, though, with Abon the Armorsmith is he does not himself have any armor. So always keep that in mind with the weakness there. So Abad the Grim. Now, when you play him, he captures 3. Already amazing card. When you reap, though, discard 1 from Abad the Grim. So picture Charette, and this is a better version of that. Crazy good card. Blinding Light, stun, choose a house, stun each creature of that house. Amazing card. We have 2 of those. So you can just control your opponent's deck. Amazing stuff. Shield of Justice. For the remainder of the turn, each friendly creature cannot be dealt damage. If you have creatures already out ready to fight, this is an amazing card. Otherwise, it sucks. Unless you have this card. Smite. Ready and fight. With a friendly creature, deal 2 damage to the attack creature's neighbors. Now, the one funny thing is Shield of Justice stops Maruk the Mark's capture. Because he does not block any damage with his armor whenever you just can't be dealt damage. So just keep that in mind. But this is really cool with Shield of Justice to play at the same time with a creature and just get to fight immediately. But the real, this is where things get fun. Okay, these are the shenanigans. Let's talk about this card for a second. Potion of Invulnerability. It's an Omni, which means you have to play it on Sancta, but then when you use it, you can use it on any character or house's turn. So you sacrifice it, and for the remainder of the turn, each friendly creature cannot be dealt damage. So they just can't be dealt damage. But you also have Into the Fray, which says, for the remainder of the turn, a friendly Brobnar creature gains fight ready the creature. They just keep going up to 6 times. So I actually just played a game with this where this happened. I popped Potion of Invulnerability on a Brobnar turn. On a Brobnar creature, I played Into the Fray. And then they literally fought and wiped out the opponent's field, taking no damage, completely changing the landscape for my advantage. Not a kill card, but it was an interesting scenario. And then if you get lucky, where you like have something that, say, gains amber in those situations, that would at least get you some. But at the very least, you're controlling your opponent, which that in and of itself is very, very powerful. So just keep that in mind. Into the Fray, Potion of Invulnerability, it does require a few cards, at least 3 cards to make work. Take hostages for the remainder of the turn. Each time a friendly creature fights, it captures 1. That's a pretty good card. Just useful. Shield of Justice again. Cannot be dealt damage. I think what really lets this deck down is, in some ways, these 2 parts and some of the logos itself as well. Because, like I said, it's just rated at the 30% mark. And I think what's wrong with it is just it's fast at times, but then you get into these sections, and unless you can do those weird little combos, you're not going to have a whole lot going on. There's no real kill cards directly. So at least that's what I remember. I don't remember if there's any in here, and I don't think there is, because usually Logos doesn't have a lot of kill cards. Like Bouncing Death Quark, we'll have that occasionally, but it's not in here, I don't believe. So first off, Titan Mechanic, while it's on a flank, each key costs -1. That's really good, but it also applies to your opponent. Titan Librarian, this is a really weird card. At the end of your turn, if Titan Librarian is not on a flank, archive a card. So if he gets into the middle of your battle line, then you get to archive a card, but it's after you draw cards. So it's a little slower than the normal archive, but it is still archiving. So just keep that in mind, that that will be a card you can't use next turn. And you don't get to replace it right away. Igor, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, add 1 to your hand, discard the others. This is great because it allows you to search your deck, essentially. And the unfortunate thing is, though, you do have to discard those. Another Titan Mechanic. Poke. I like this card. It's not a great card, but it's a fun card. Deal 1 damage to an enemy creature. If it destroys it, draw a card. You can target yourself in order to just get the draw card for that chance at some more play. So, Library of Babel. It's an artifact, so you can't use it the first turn you play it, but it's an action to draw a card. Okay. Poke again. All right, here's what's going to lower your rating right off the bat. These are terrible cards. The only saving grace is they generate an amber. Steal 2 amber if your opponent has 8 or more. There's a lot of games where that's going to happen, that they have 8 or more, but there's a lot of games where they're going to sit at 6 or 7 on purpose because they know about cards like this. There are 2 of those in this deck. I hate these cards. These are the trashiest cards sometimes. And yet there's that one moment where it'll actually work and it'll do great. But it's just, if they don't have 8 or more, you steal nothing. So all of a sudden this card is just 1 amber generation and you've done nothing with this card. So let's talk about the Time Traveler here in a second. Wild Wormhole, love these cards. Play the top card of your deck. Just fun. But, okay, keep this in mind. These are one of these cards that they're amazing in the games where they're amazing, and then they're nothing in the games where they're nothing. Because you just play the top card. It could be a Shield of Justice and you take no damage. Cool, but I just laid down a bunch of creatures and I can't fight with them this turn. Or there's nothing to fight, you know? Or you get the most epic card ever that kills everything, depending on what deck you have. So it's one of those cards it's really, really cool. But it's also really random, so you just, no guarantees on this. The Time Traveller. My deck sleeve has like gotten messed up here. So first off, he's one of the few creatures in the beginning of the game, because later on we would get amber pips on everything out under the sun. But he's one of the few creatures in the first couple gens of the game that actually generated amber natively. And when you play him, you immediately draw 2 cards. So he's just a fast play. And you know, if even one of those is Logos, then you sped up your deck a little bit. And it's an action, so if you can at least get him to survive 1 turn, you shuffle him back into your deck. So he can just keep coming out, keep drawing cards, keep doing things. So the rest of this Logos isn't that fantastic, but just a Time Traveler in and of itself speeds up your deck. Whenever you're only talking about 36 cards and you can draw 2 of them immediately, it's pretty good. It's, you know, it's like library access, but it's a reusable. And here's where it gets even faster. You get an automatic amber generation here. Search your deck and discard pile for a Time Traveler, reveal it and put it into your hand. Shuffle your discard pile into your deck. So first off, here's what we do. You get into your, so if he's in your deck, you get him out immediately. If he's in your discard pile, you resurrect him essentially from death. You reveal him and you put him in your hand, so then you're going to play him that turn. Shuffle your discard pile into your deck. So what it's doing is before this goes to the discard pile, it's shuffling the discard pile back into your deck so that way this card can't come back out for a while. It's going to be a while before you see Time Traveler again as far as from this card. So if you can keep him alive, he can go back into the deck. But you will, and this always comes with a Time Traveler. This is always there, and that's why this little symbol right, yeah, that little diamond with the pip in the middle. It just is saying this is a special card that exists because of another card. So as long as you can do that and just keep generating him, or at least get him out a couple times in the game, you're going to have fun. There's always that chance, though, that somebody on their turn has a purge card and just nukes him. But regardless of that, he's at least been played once and generated an amber and 2 cards. And even if one of those cards was Logos, more than likely you're going to generate some amber, or at least get to play another creature, something like that. So it's an interesting deck. It's not rated very high, but whenever it plays against things at its tier, it just outspeeds them just by the sheer fact of Time Traveler itself. Time Traveler in a good deck is terrifying. And in a bad deck, when you're playing against other bad decks, is terrifying. Just because he speeds things up, the deck itself may not be good and synergize well, but just because of a Time Traveler giving you access to things quicker gives you more opportunities to do crazy silliness. So yeah, that's this deck. Honestly, I really enjoy playing this deck. I'm not a fan of Brobnar at all, just because fighting in this game, it's almost sometimes the thing that you do only because you need to get stuff off the board. And when Brobnar's really working, it's kind of awesome, and you can generate tons of amber. Like, we've seen crazy amounts of amber generated with certain things where it's Gengar Chieftain and War Drummer, I believe, because War Drummer returns each character to each Brobnar creature to your hand, and then Gengar Chieftain readies and fights with a friendly creature. And so it's something like that where they just keep readying back up, and if there's nothing to fight, you can just reap. It's really crazy shenanigans. I've seen it once or twice happen. Really cool. But this deck doesn't really have that, and I'm just not ever a fan of Brobnar, because I'll do the fighting, but I'd rather have something that has an extra game mechanic inside of it than just Brobnar getting money from fighting occasionally if it has the right cards. Whereas Logos is your speed section. Sanctum is your capture section. Mars is your, I'm going to mess around with you and take my time and abduct you maybe. I don't know. Mars is the weirdest thing because it never really figured out what it was entirely, which is unfortunate, and that's why I'm excited for when the new expansion does come out. And then you've got the disc that controls your opponent's deck, which is just hilarious shenanigans. Shadows is also one of my not favorites, but it's a good mechanic because it steals like crazy. Ironically, though, the Sanctum good decks of it, and we'll probably do a preview of that at some point, where one of my good decks, you can turn Sanctum into a steal deck, and it does stealing better than actually Shadows, which is crazy. So we've got Shadows, and Untamed. Again, Untamed doesn't really know exactly what it does. It does a little bit of healing. It likes to generate amber by playing creatures. Sometimes it's weird. It has its moments where it's really good, and it has its moments where I'm like, I just don't know what the identity is. And that's the funny thing about this game. It's like, it's a great game, but then there's factions where you see this kind of stuff where you know exactly what they're gonna do. And Bromnar, at least it knows what it's gonna do. It's gonna fight, and it's gonna fight a lot, and that's fine. I'm glad for that. Just not my kind of playstyle that I enjoy. I'd rather mess around behind the scenes and then interact when I need to for certain things, because other factions fight as well and get bonuses, but Brobnar just focuses on it. So that's its focus, but at least it has a focus. And then we've gotten new factions as well that have different focuses, which is great. I love that about this game. And hopefully when the new expansion comes out, we get to see what this new faction's focus is. So anyway, what's your thoughts on this deck down in the comments below? And what's your favorite factions? I'm still curious. All right, take care. Have fun.